Welcome to Magical Soup. I am firing this podcast back up after a very long hiatus because I had a mushroom journey that told me that this is what I needed to do. So I'm doing it. And I know that sounds crazy, but here's the deal. I am going to sound crazy. And I know this, which is why I don't want to do this. But I am supposed to. So I'm doing it. Here we are. Doing it, universe. Thanks. You know, it started out as stories about magic and synchronicity that I was experiencing in my life. And now it's kind of morphed into something else. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't. I don't care to tell anyone what to do. I don't have any advice to give you. I'm enthralled by what's happening in the world right now. And so I want to stay in that space of hope and a high vibration. And I've just been on this journey of exploration about what this is, what this reality actually is. And so I'm going to tell you right now what I think this reality actually is so that you just know in advance and you can be like, okay, she's cuckoo and I'm not going to listen to this. And then you can not troll me. Just don't listen, please. Okay. I would appreciate that. I'm right now, my current favorite theory is that we are living in a simulation. And maybe we are the AI. Maybe we are becoming conscious within this game. And I feel like I know part of the reason why I think that is because I became conscious in 2015. So, and what I mean by becoming conscious is that you are separate from the programming that you were running that was given to you from society, from parents, from your gender, all kinds of things. When I became conscious, my entire life blew up. I mean, my entire life. Everything that was familiar about my life changed. My career, my 7-year relationship, my home that I had been in for 10 years, like everything changed. And it was really hard and very scary and very sad at times. But now I am like, it's the best thing that happened to me. And I'm on this like incredible path of creating the life that I actually want to live. And it's still a work in progress. I'm having there are times when I really am struggling even just to understand what it is that I want out of this life, much less like how to go about getting it and how this all works. But I am figuring that out. I have figured a bunch of it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I think I'm going to add the podcast that I was on to this intro episode. And that podcast was done by a dear friend who was asking me questions about my burn. I go to Burning Man and I have been going for a number of years. My first year was 2015. That's what sparked me into consciousness, was going to Burning Man. And the reason that it sparked me into consciousness was because it was for the first time in my life that I got to see a city full of people who were radically self-expressed in however they wanted to show up. And there were weirdos everywhere and no one cared. It was amazing. In fact, the more weirdos, the better. Like I love, the best part about Burning Man are all the weirdos and how crazy people dress and how they choose to express themselves. And so being in that environment and then looking at how homogenized my whole fucking life was, all of a sudden, I just saw how boring, like homogenized my world was. And I couldn't take it. And so that was really how I identified and broke out of my programming, is because I saw it for what it was, and it was not cute. It was not cute. So I think it would probably make sense for me to tack this podcast on, because it's already done and I don't have to do anything, and I can post this episode and the mushroom gods will get off my back because I'll actually be doing something. It's funny. It's funny because it's true. That is actually why I'm doing this. But I do think that I'm not just lazy. I really do think that this podcast has, he captured me telling stories of the magic that happened at my burn, and gets a really good sort of snapshot into how I burn at Burning Man. So here is the podcast that Scott Powers of Not Real Art recorded on his Not Real Art podcast a couple weeks after we returned from Burning Man in 2022.
Newbie, welcome to the Not Real Art podcast.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So Newbie is your Playa name, which is very appropriate because this is our Burning Man, post-Burning Man decompression episode. And it's good to keep our Playa names intact, if nothing else, to protect the innocent.
Right? Totally.
and, you know, I feel like fame is so overrated these days. There's nothing more valuable than your anonymity. And, you know, so let's keep it that way, right?
I love that. Yes, that is absolutely true. That is what it's about.
So Newbie, just to set level set here and provide a little context for our audience, million listeners out there.
Yeah.
You and I are fresh back off the Playa. We've just washed the dust off from Burning Man 2022, Waking Dreams. And, what a hell of a burn. I'm so grateful that you wanted to come on and share with me and chat with me and decompress with me for a little bit because, you know, as vivid as everything is now, of course, things sort of fade away. But, and it's been 3 years since our last burn. Usually, it's once a year. So I don't know, the rhythm or the muscle memory or the memories, I guess, are perhaps easier to maintain sometimes. But anyway, so here we are, and we get to chat and record for posterity, what our burns were like. But you go first. I want to hear from you. I mean, first of all, Newbie, how many burns was this for you this year?
This was my fifth burn.
Fifth burn. Okay. All right. Yeah. So you're 2 years my senior because this is my third burn, although this was my first year seeing the man burn.
Whoa, how'd you miss it twice?
Well, but my daughter's birthday is August 30th.
Oh.
So historically, I have gone in early, set up camp, and then I have left early to be there for my daughter's birthday. However, this year, she gave me her blessing to stay the whole burn, and nice. So I got to see the man burn, but for the first time, which was amazing. So this was your fifth burn,
yeah. And
of course, every burn is the best burn. It's like right. I mean, maybe except for the weather. This year's weather was freaking hot and windy and dusty and all that. But take us, take us through. I mean, you're called Newbie, which is interesting because you're not a newbie anymore. So how does number 5 compare to number 1?
Well, I mean, number 1, I came in because my friends had told me there was this awesome party in the desert.
Well, that's true. That's a true statement.
It is. But I quickly, once I got the survival guide, I was like, oh, wait a minute. What is this you guys signed me up for?
Yeah.
And then I read about it. And in my first one, I was like, wait, okay. So we're going in Thursday, but we can go in Monday? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm going in Monday. I'll catch you guys there Thursday. So I went in by myself, my very first burn. I rolled in there.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was crazy. I hitchhiked from the airport. I found a ride at the airport.
Look at you, man. You are a pro. I love it.
So that was my entrance into Burning Man. And each year has gotten, for me, my experience is that each year I'm dialing it in more and more in terms of the way I don't know if for me, it's an energetic portal.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it is magic and instant manifestation that has been increasing every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating. It's not, you don't get what you want, but if you're paying attention, there's just constantly signs and synchronicities and magic and people that you run into that are like there for you. They're there to guide you to the next thing that you're supposed to do. And so for me, actually, in 2019, I joked that I won Burning Man because it was nonstop magic. It was this beautiful, magical thing from start to end. And so I knew that when I came this year, I would have to do it totally different. And oh my God, it was really, really different for me.
So what was if you could talk about one major difference, how was it so different?
Well, this time I got volunteered to be the leader of early team. And our camp has been around for 21 years. We have massive infrastructure. And through the series of events, I went from being like the co-lead supporting the person who's been doing it, this incredible woman, to the fact that she wasn't coming. And now I was put in this position of like actual leadership. And
no stress there, right?
No stress there. And then on top of that, like we have this like playbook that we follow, but then on top of that, the org was like, oh, sorry, you can't have 22 people. You have to have 12 people your first day. And you're starting a day later. And we're like, wait, org, like we have tents that require 16 people synchronous, like to like all at the same time lift these parachutes in the air and slide them down on rebar. And if the wind blows while it's in the air, like you're fucked.
Yeah.
And so like it's like you have like it has to be efficient, it has to be clear. There's a lot of like group dynamic. And so we're like recruiting people the first day to help us, and we set up 2 tents and we're high-fiving each other and we're like, we're the most efficient early team. This is amazing. And then we like totally were overconfident and forgot that the playa wants to kill you.
Bears are real.
And then that night we had the hurricane force winds roll through and take out everything we did.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It was crazy. We took shelter in our semi when the wind was rolling through. And so, and then from that point on, the whole week was just about how to get everyone, having fun and building a camp and, and it was hot. It was a very, very, very hot year, temperature wise. And so the whole first part of my burn, I'm like, I got to step into leadership. I got to step into leadership in a crisis. And then I had this really powerful mirror the rest of the week of people telling me like how good I was. And like when you did this, that was like a master class in leadership. And meanwhile, I'm like, I just was being me. Like I was just getting it done the way that I know how.
Sure.
So it's like, I'm still processing that piece of it. 'Cause I'm like, what does it mean?
right.
I thought I was just going to go have fun.
Well, you hit on a key point because your camp's been around for 20 years. I mean, this camp, they're sort of, dare I say, a bit legendary in many ways, a camp of healers. I don't know really your origin story about how you connected with HeebieJeebie, but there's man. You there's pressure there. There's pressure, period, just because you're, a conscientious human being who wants to do a good job and you don't want anybody to get hurt and you're trying to do it right and all that good stuff. And, but then you layer in, the fact that you've been put in this leadership position either by whether that was intentional or by accident or whatever the case might be. But there you are. and you're feeling the strain of all of this, and obviously it sounds like you handled it with amazing grace, which is beautiful. But how did you link up with HeebieGB and talk about the camp?
So yeah, that's actually a really funny story. The way that I ended up at the heebie-jeebie camp was because I came back from that first burn, and I was telling my mom about it, and I was describing all of the art and like the city, and she's like I gotta go to Burning Man, and I'm like, yes, mom. I'm like, yeah, and she's like, no, like I need to go,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay. Like let's find a camp that works for you. Like
Right, right.
what is a camp that would allow my 74-year-old mom
Sure.
to feel welcome and safe and have this like oasis from like the cacophony that is out there.
Yes, yes.
And so I found the Hebies, and I'm like, a healing camp, yes, that's perfect, like it'll
Yeah.
be. And it ended up being the camp for me. Like,
Right. Wow.
yeah.
There's some magic for you.
Right? Yeah. So we've been around for 21 years, and we offer, healing to the playa. We do, we do body work, and we have chiropractors and acupuncturists, and we do a lot of energy work. And, we tend to, when I'm healing on the playa, I tend to, in the past, I have attracted people who have kind of fucked up their burn, and they don't know why they don't feel good, and they don't know why they're not having fun. And I help them to work through that, and get their burn back on track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big deal, right? Because I mean, the 10 principles, I mean, in terms of like radical self-reliance. Well, I mean, if you don't know how to be, if you're not self-reliant in the default world, how the hell are you going to be self-reliant on the playa, which is, trying to kill you?
Yeah.
It's a very challenging thing.
Well, and I think what's really surprising for a lot of people is the amount of freedom that they feel when they're there. That feeling of like just being fully accepted for however it is that you want to show up. Your self-expression is allowed no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people that's like kind of painful, because they feel that, and then they recognize how they are in the default world, in the regular world, and how they're hiding and how they're not being themselves. And so it can get a little, especially with their family of origin, right? Like their parents, like how many people are like their authentic selves in front of their parents. That's a big one.
So speaking of parents again, I mean, was your mom there with you this year? Does she go back with you every year now?
Yeah, she goes every year.
Oh, fuck yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah,
wow.
It's awesome to see her. It's awesome to see her there. And it's like, I just have so many people who are like, I love your mom. Like, I love your mom. She's pretty great.
They're like, okay, now we know why you're so cool, because your mom is even cooler. Well, that explains a lot, because, you and I were texting a little bit early on, and but when we still had a signal, I guess, and you had said that you'd been on Playa for quite a while, and I guess I was one at the time. I didn't know you were camp lead, so I was like, oh wow, I mean, she really rolled out extra early. Our camp, some of our core camp members did that same. They sort of came out on that Monday, but I knew why they were doing it, because they were just trying to get camp set up a little bit extra early. So you were out there building the camp, and it's a big camp. You guys have a big camp. I don't know how many structures that you have, but you have what, 4 big structures?
We actually have 8.
Eight
military parachute tents. Which after this year, like, we're definitely gonna.
You're down to 6.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. We're really having to look at our infrastructure, because it's, I mean, they're 21-year-old tents. Like they take a beating, and this year they took an extra beating. So,
right.
And it's, it's an ass kicker. And we laugh about it, because we're like, what? Like, we're choosing this. We're choosing
Yeah.
to do this thing.
What
Like,
the fuck is wrong with us?
what is wrong with us? We're like, yeah, let me go work in 105-degree heat and pound rebar into like cement ground.
Right.
And yeah, and drink warm water all day because there's no ice, and like frantically build shades so that we don't die. Like, what?
Nothing amazing ever happens without putting your life on the line, it seems.
You know, there is something to be said about that. There is something to be said about that. You do get rewarded when you take risks, I think, in this life. I do.
So there's so much on your mind about your burn,
Mm.
and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because these things evaporate somehow. I mean,
Mm.
we tend to romanticize the good stuff, we tend to forget the bad stuff. The truly powerful personal moments never, I feel like, never leave, right? But there
Yeah.
is just a lot, and I wanted to sort of have you on to sort of provide an opportunity to sort of capture, right?
Mm.
This energy that is, so pronounced right now, and what have you, and without putting you on the spot, but putting you on the spot. What do you want to say? Like, what do you want to share? What do you want to capture here? Because we don't want to forget.
Yeah. Oof. I think that's. Uh, I guess I'm curious whether you had themes show up for your burn, because I definitely had themes show up for mine, and I'll just like rattle them off, and then maybe we'll go someplace for one of
Mm-hmm.
them. But like one of the themes that I had was discos. Like I had disco balls and disco music and disco artwork, and like everywhere I went there were discos. And it was amazing because I freaking love disco music, so it's
Yeah.
perfect for me. But the and another one was candy. I was offered candy everywhere I went. And I don't eat candy, but for some reason it was so delicious that it
Right.
was like every time I was offered it, like after the first time, and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty great. Next thing I know, everywhere I go, I'm offered candy. And I'm like, yes, I do want that candy, turns out. And it was so, but on the flip side of that, I had a burn where every single thing I tried to do, once early team was over and I had
Mm-hmm.
retired and I launched into the actual burn, every single thing I tried to do intentionally did not work out. The only time things worked out is when I was just kind of in a flow state. And
Yeah.
and then really great stuff showed. Still not the burn that I wanted. Like when I think about the burn that I wanted, this wasn't it.
What
But
bird did you? What kind of what burn did you want?
I wanted I wanted um I wanted dance parties with like 20 of my favorite people, and and out on Playa with just like the best art car rolling up playing the best music. I wanted I'm single, and I'm like, this is my year. This is my year to like have some Playa dates and do some like really fun, like push my edges and boundaries when it comes to that kind of thing. And a little bit, but not, not that. It wasn't either of those things. But it was incredibly poignant, and it was incredibly magic. And uh yeah, and the leadership part of it, I didn't see that coming at all. And that's still a really big piece of it. um
So maybe you didn't get what you wanted. Did you get what you need?
yeah, that's the thing. That's what it does. It gives us what we need. It doesn't give us what we want.
Turns
I
out though, so what did you turn? What did you need? What did you find out you
uh,
needed that you didn't know?
Well, I could tell you a very like poignant story. And I could tell you a very like sort of mystical, magical, this is how the playa works story.
Tell
Which
them
one?
both, please.
Okay.
We've got time. This is why we're here.
All
We
right.
want
All
good
right.
stories.
Okay. So, okay. So, a number of burns ago, actually my second burn, is when I started really picking up on how quickly you can manifest things on Playa.
Mm.
And I had ended up at this campfire with a random group of people, and I had been thinking all night. I used to smoke. I quit smoking
Mm-hmm.
a really long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But this particular night, for some reason, I was like, oh gosh, a cigarette would be really lovely. And I'm like, maybe I could just have one every year when I come to Burning Man.
Oh, that's
And I'm
really nice.
like,
I like that. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, that's fun. Like I get to do it still, but it's very limited. There's no danger of it slipping. And I miss it and I love it. And so I end up randomly pulling into this campground. I love going out by myself. I go out by myself like 90% of the time when I'm on Playa.
Right on.
And I like pull into this camp where they're like having a campfire sing along. And this woman like pats the seat and I sit down next to her and we start talking. And she's like, would you like a cigarette? And I'm like, yeah, I'm
Boy,
like,
would I.
yes. I'm like, I would. I'm like, what do you smoke? And she's like, well, you probably won't want it because it's menthol. And I'm like, that's my cigarette. Like, I love menthol. Like, so that was my first Playa cigarette. And every year since then, I've had one.
Right,
And
right.
so this year I roll into early team, and the very first piece of moop, matter out of place, that I look down
Yes.
on the ground and see is a cigarette. And I laugh and I'm like, is this my Playa cigarette? Like it's already here day one. And I look at it and it's not menthol. And so I'm like, I'm gonna hold off on this one. And I like prop it up on my, in my living space. And then I promptly forget about it. And all of the things happen. And I literally do not remember my Playa cigarette. I don't remember it. Like there's so much other things happening. And now it's the last night and I go out to, it's the last sunrise. And I love saying goodbye to the Playa. Especially at sunrise. It's like a way to just sort of close it out. And so I'm riding out there by myself and I have my journal and I've got like my little speaker and I'm like gonna watch the sunrise and meditate and journal all by myself. And I get out to the trash fence and I like set up. And all of a sudden, this woman comes walking over to me. And she's obviously not having a good time.
Mm.
And she's like, I just feel so alone right now. I'm like, she's like, I don't want to interrupt your alone time, but I'm feeling alone. And I'm like, get over here. Come on over. Let's do this sunrise together. Like, get on in here. And so she sits down next to me and we're like kind of hugging and talking and having this really amazing conversation. And it like, we end up like laughing. We've got a very similar sense of humor. She's like this beautiful woman. And then she goes, do you mind if I smoke a cigarette? And at first, because I had forgotten it so much, at first I was like, I don't, but can you go over? Wait a minute.
No.
I'm like, what kind of cigarette do you smoke? And she's like, I smoke menthol. And I'm like,
Yeah. Playa magic.
And then it gets even better because some other random woman who was also like kind of in our area by the trash fence comes walking over and is like, would you like some hot coffee?
No.
And so I have coffee and a cigarette at sunrise. Like that, like this is my favorite. Like when I smoked, that was my favorite. And it was like, thank you, Playa. Yes. Yeah. That was magic.
That is magic. That's Playa magic right there.
It is. I love it so much. And so this is like how this would lead into my my poignant story, which is that my dad passed away during the pandemic.
I'm sorry. So my dad actually passed as well, and I know how you feel in that regard. I'm really sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, you cannot, losing a parent is something that you do not understand until you actually do it, until you actually have it. And it rocked me a bit, for sure. And it, yeah. Anyway, so I'm bringing a picture of my dad to the temple. And this is the first night and I'm with one of my best friends and we're riding around Playa and we might have done a few mind altering things. So
Allegedly.
we're riding around looking at art, and we end up going by the temple. And I don't have the picture of my dad with me. This is going to be a later thing, but I love looking at the temple in the beginning and then looking at it at the end of the week. And I like to just see how it feels. And so we walk through the temple, and I'm, you know, thinking about my dad and talking about it with my friend. And we walk out of the temple, and the way that we see art is that when we're riding around Deep Playa, like the randomness of what you end up running into, like even if
Totally.
you try to go find something, it's really hard to do.
Yep.
And part of the art that you run into for me is Playa magic as well. And
Yep.
so what we really try to do is drop into our intuition. And if either one of us at any time says, I got to go see this one, then that's what we do.
Yep.
And we go and we explore that thing. And so we get on our bikes, and I'm telling him about my dad, and I'm like telling him how, like, my dad shows up as butterflies. And it's ridiculous because he is not a butterfly guy, like at all.
Yeah.
And I was like really struggling with it and kind of rejecting it at first because I thought I was making it up, or I was attaching meaning to it or whatever. And then it just would happen so consistently. Like literally where like I would have a butterfly like fly up in my face. Like I'd be thinking about my dad, and I'd be like outside, and all of a sudden a butterfly would like, come right at me. And so I'm like, okay, now I'm at peace with it. And I'm like, hey dad, like when I see the butterfly. And so I'm telling him this, and we start riding our bikes, and he's in front, and I see this art piece, and I'm like, wait, I want to go ride through this. He's like, okay. So he waits, and I turn around and I ride up backwards through this art piece. And the art piece is these giant tree branches that are coming up from the playa. And on the end of the branches are these golden pods that are like hanging down all along. So it's kind of like a tree branch hallway.
Yep.
And so I ride. Did you see this piece or no?
I did. Yep.
You did? Yeah.
Yep.
So I ride up through it to the top of it, and my bike stops dead. Like, you know how you have those pockets of like quicksand?
Oh,
where,
yeah,
like,
the sand traps. Oh, yeah.
the sand traps.
Yeah.
So most times, right? Like, especially if you're not pedaling very fast, you can kind of just like pedal your way through it.
Right.
This was like a dead hard stop.
Hard stop, yeah.
And I was like, okay. I'm like, I guess I'm supposed to stop here for a minute. Like, hold on a second. So I get off my bike and I walk to the top of this art piece, and I'm not super paying attention, but I can hear things like kind of twinkling in the breeze. Like there's branches on either side of this desk, and there's things hanging on the branches that are kind of twinkling and making noise. And I look down at the desk, and I see like a couple Sharpies and a drawer, and I pull open the drawer, and inside the drawer are butterflies, wooden butterflies.
Wow.
And the point is to write what you love on these butterflies and then hang them on the art piece.
Sure. Wow.
And my dad was a woodworker.
Yeah.
And I'm like immediately like just burst into tears, because it was like understanding the number of things that needed to line up to get to that moment. The chances that I would even find that art piece, that I would come across it right after telling the story about my dad. Like it just felt like the biggest gift I could have ever, like it was better than any picture in a temple. It was like my dad was there, and it was lovely, lovely, lovely closure for me, especially in a time like when someone passes in COVID, and the way that funerals are and the way that things rolled out. It was like very unclosure, like.
Yeah.
And
wow.
So
You're so, what a gift. What a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. It really was. And it's funny, I had people, there were two things that happened that Playa gave me time back to on another night, where the same night, we'd seen all of the art. We had gone all the way out to Deep Playa. we're like sitting on this random couch out in deep Playa and like talking about the sun's going to rise any minute. And the next thing you know, Robot Heart comes rolling directly towards us, fought like with the entire Playa following behind it, like a swarm of, bright, sparkly fish. And so we decide we're going to catch Robot Heart later in the week, and we're going to head in, and we hit a couple more art, and then we hit a cuddle puddle, and we kind of fall asleep, and then we wake up again. And then we're like, okay, really, like, how is the sun not up? We have got to get to bed. Let's stop at the porta potties. And then my friend comes out of the porta potty, and he's like, do you want to know what time it is? And I'm like, I do not. I don't think I want to know what time it is at all. And he's like, yeah, no, you do. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, it's 3. I'm like, we start high-fiving each other. We're like, fuck yes. We got time.
We don't have to go to bed yet. We're ahead of schedule. We're way ahead of schedule.
Turns out we had a whole night, and now we still have extra time. Yeah.
Oh man,
it was great. But
wow. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's, these stories are but 2 examples, right? Of them probably perhaps millions of stories like this that people have. You have 80,000 people coming together, and the synchronicities, the interactions, the magical moments. I mean, probably countless, on a certain level.
Most definitely. Like even like this little tiny moment, right? Like where I'm like riding back from Deep Playa, and I see this guy walking by himself, and I see him bend over and pick up Moop, and when he holds it up, it's like a card.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, just at that moment, I'm riding by him, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, what is the Playa telling you?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, oh. And he like looks at the card, and he says, the Playa is asking me whether I plan to go to Bali. And I'm like, do you plan to go to Bali? And he's like, yeah, actually, I've been thinking about it. And I'm like, awesome.
Get your ticket.
There you go.
Oh man. Wow. So did you make it back to Temple with your dad's photo after that? Because I could see how after that magical moment, maybe it was all you needed, right? But maybe not. Like, I don't know. How did that impact your intention, I guess, moving forward?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. That question, I get that question a lot, like from the people who have told this story to you, that question comes up a lot. And also the question of what did I do when I found out it was 3 a.m.? And for me, the answer is so clear. There's not even a debate. And so it's curious to me that I have this like set idea of what the answer is, but other people are like not sure. And so where does that come from? I don't know. But the 100% I did not put my dad's picture. Putting my dad's picture in the temple to me would have been dishonoring the gift that I was given.
Right. Sure. I totally get that.
I was given this incredible gift, and to like want more after that is not, that's not it. It's not honoring what I was given. Yeah. And the same thing goes for the time. Like our intention was to go home and go to bed so that we could actually have a day. And we were given time. We were given time to sleep, you know?
Right. Great point.
And so going back out again would have,
been greedy.
Yeah, it would have been greedy.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have acknowledged the gift that we were given, which was we really wanted to be able to have some sleep. And we were given that. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's that sort of awareness that is, certainly not everyone of the 80,000 people that go have that level of awareness. But I mean, when you, hopefully over time, certainly, right, as you go to different burns or whatever, you learn that awareness, right, is so important, to understand what's happening in a moment and to be able to kind of respect that moment and receive that moment and be grateful for that moment. I mean, it's a pro tip. Put it that way, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like it is. And I definitely like the more that my progression throughout the years that I've been burning is what I figured is that what I found is that the more that I was grateful and present to the gift that was given to me, the synchronicity, no matter how small, that when I delighted in that, it happened over and over again.
Hmm. Yeah.
And the other phenomenon that I've found is what is so true is if stuff starts breaking, like if your bike breaks and your headlamp breaks and your backpack won't, like the people go through these like moments where everything is breaking.
Hmm.
And that's a sign that you're doing it wrong, that you need to
Yeah.
stop and
The
recalibrate.
tension, yeah, there's some sort of conflict, some sort of tension, pain point, or something that's causing these frustrations or causing
Yeah.
these, breakdowns. And hopefully you see it and hopefully you adjust, right?
Yeah. Well,
It's like
that
the
was
round peg, square hole kind of thing,
Well, yeah,
right?
that was what I had to come to terms with because I kept trying to do stuff that I wanted to do, and I would get there and it would be like, oh, it was canceled,
Right.
or oh, it's not happening, or whatever it was. And I was like, I had a moment of frustration around it and like, man, why am I not getting what I want?
Yeah.
Um,
I want what I want.
yeah.
Why am I not getting it? Um, Well, and I wonder to what extent, staying, in your camp, heebie-jeebie, like, I wonder to what extent, well, broadly speaking, I wonder to what extent one's camp shapes one's experience, right? And,
Oh,
and heebie-jeebie is, healing camp. And so by nature, and I've been there, I know the camp and I know, some of the people there, so to speak. And so we're talking about folks and we're talking about a camp who I think comparatively speaking, is probably a bit more open and a bit more attuned and a bit more sensitive and empathetic than your average camp.
yeah.
I'm just going to put that out there, right? So to what extent is that influencing your experience and helping you tap in and helping you be open?
Mm,
Because I'm sure there are other camps, that are, and the diversity of camps. There was like 1,500 camps. I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
and some camps are just all about the party, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So are
Yeah.
you, or is that camp going to be as, what's that experience like?
Mm.
So anyways, it's just interesting. I wonder to what extent our camps influence our experience.
I mean, I think that they can influence it a ton.
Hmm.
I know that the advantage for me has been by being at a healing camp, you were surrounded by healers like all of
Hmm.
the time. Like you come
Hmm.
into camp and you're broken and sad, and there's someone right there who is hugging you for as long as you need to be hugged.
Hmm.
And um having that soft landing every time you come back in, like I know that there are a lot of people who like maybe dread returning to their camp because there's drama or there's
Yeah.
you know whatever, they don't want to run into someone, or there's none of that at the Hebes, and it makes it feel like, yeah, like a place to really recharge and reset before you head back out and see what.
Totally, totally. And I was thinking about that a lot myself too, because our camp is, I guess you'd classify it as kind of a theme camp. And essentially, Camp Corny, our camp, we run a spirit animal adoption center. And so you come in and you use our state of the art technology to get matched with your spirit animal. And we've rescued stuffed animals from around the country who are sick because nobody's ever loved them, and they live on a diet of dance. And so for them to be healthy and to be vital, they need love, they need dance. And so you come through our. We, by the way, we matched, I think, close to 3,000 spirit animals this year,
Oh
and
my
we
god.
have been doing this now for several years.
Oh.
And so you come in, you spin our wheel, State of the art technology matches you. You jump into the pool of stuffed animals, which have several hundred stuffed animals. The first stuffed animal you feel, that's your spirit animal. You come out, and then because they live on a diet of dance, you need a party pole. So there's a small minor surgical procedure, not that painful, where we insert a party pole up the anus of your spirit animal, and then you then go to the dance floor and you raise your party pole and you dance with your spirit animal, and that's how you nurse it back to health. And if there is a little pain or discomfort, we run a pharmacy in the back, and you can go get some rainbow drink, which is a proprietary formulation to mitigate and alleviate any pain or discomfort. And so I share this because that might sound goofy, and that might sound ridiculous. And by the way, it's the Playa, so of course
It
there's
must be.
plenty
Yes.
plenty of goof and ridiculousness. And so we play right into that, and it's and it's a theme, and it's a shtick, and people get into it, and they love it, and we own it, and so we do 3 of these parties, and we've done this over several years. And so what has been happening now, and we say our gift is joy, right? Like, we're giving the gift of joy to the camp, or to the Playa.
Yeah.
And so what has happened now over several years of doing this is that we get videos and photos year round from around the world with people, partying and playing with their spirit animal, and furthermore, 2 things. One is, you'll be out deep Playa, 4 a.m, whatever, at some random sound camp or whatever, and you roll up and there are people with their spirit animals. I mean, you will see people with them on their bikes, and you figure if we've probably given away well over 10,000 stuffed animals now, I guess, over a few years. And so,
Wow.
so you see that joy, right? And then, just to kind of talk about poignant stories. So I went to the temple to honor my dad, and so I'm exploring the temple, and it was midweek, so it was like Wednesday. So there's a lot of shrines, and a lot of stories and photos and stuff. So I'm always just very interested in the humanity of it, and taking all of that in. And so I happen upon this one kind of I guess shrine. I guess it wasn't anyway. So but it struck me for some reason. There's several photos, and it's clearly a situation where someone has lost their best friend, and the person writing and posting the memorial was a woman, and she had written this really poignant paragraph about her sadness and her grief of having lost her best friend, that their best times together were at Burning Man, and that while they intended to burn together for years and years to come, that obviously the universe had other plans, but that she will burn for them both, and that they're both their greatest memories are on Playa, and so on and so forth. And I'm guessing the age was way too young, maybe late 20s.
Wow.
And not clear what happened. Cancer, COVID, not clear.
Yeah.
Something else, not clear. But I'm looking at the photos of them celebrating at Burning Man over the years, her and her best friend. And one of the big photos is of them at our camp with the spirit animals.
Oh.
Right? And they're standing there, and they've got these biggest smiles on their faces, because they've got their spirit animal, And it's that kind of magic. It's that kind of poignancy that you're talking about, right? I mean, you never know what you're giving to somebody. You never know what your gift is, maybe, really, or you have intention, but who knows how it plays out, right? And I brought that story back to camp and shared it at dinner, and because these are telltale signs, right?
Yeah.
that our intentions sometimes pay off.
That's amazing. I love that. I love everything about what your camp is doing. I feel like I can imagine that there are people who need that silliness and need that invitation to dance and that you probably having that kind of a thing like allows them to tap into their silliness in a way
Totally.
that they probably don't.
Yeah. Right.
And
100%.
and then now the gateway is open. Like you're the gateway to silliness and dancing. Like that's
Yes.
amazing.
And you know, and one of our highlights is that parents bring their kids through, of course, you
Of
know,
course.
and to
Yeah.
see the kiddos engage, you know, is just amazing as well. So yeah, you know, I mean, and then how does that, you know, how does Camp Corny, my camp, shape my experience, you know, on Playa, you know, because um, it's a very specific vibe, and you know, and you know, I think at the end of the day, no matter what camp you're at, it does boil down to the people, right?
Yeah.
And if you love your campmates, you love your camp, you love your time at Burning Man. You know, if there's drama in the camp, you know, and there's lots of drama in camps, you know, that might color your burn as well, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Did you have a specific thing that was significant beyond that? Like that was
Mm,
amazing.
mm,
But is there
mm.
something like that happened to you or that um, you ended up doing that maybe revealed something about you that you didn't know before, or that
Um,
might have you thinking about things differently, or
this there, you know, it's interesting. There was this burn. I mean, it was great. It was different than I thought it would
yeah.
be.
Yep.
It. I found it. I was excited. I was stoked to go. Stoked to get there. Stoked to stay the whole time. Which, because as I said earlier, this was my first time seeing the man burn.
Right.
Um, However, I observed that because I showed up that Thursday before, you know, that Thursday prior, right,
Yeah.
to the event officially starting to help set up camp, and I showed up tired. Life had been this summer's been insane, and for all kinds of reasons I won't bore you with,
Yeah.
but I showed up tired. I was excited and I was happy and I was grateful to be there, but I just showed up tired. I showed up with a lot on my mind.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because it actually took me a couple days to start to kind of unwind and plug in. And then, although my daughter gave me her blessing to go,
Yeah.
you know, and we had celebrated her birthday. You know, I established a tradition with my daughter called daddy-daughter dates, and since she was 2, like we just go out and have our
Nice.
daddy-daughter dates.
Yeah.
And so we'd had a special daddy-daughter date to commemorate her birthday and all that prior to me leaving, and we had a whole celebration, just her and I. And so anyway, but it turns out I actually on her birthday in particular was just like overridden with guilt, like just like, and I missed her and I was like sad and I just suddenly
Oh.
didn't want to be there. I wanted to be with her, you know.
Yeah.
And so that was, I didn't see that coming, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So there was just, for me, there was like, and then I called her on her birthday. I went, you know, caught a signal somewhere and called her and we talked and she was fine. She was having a great day. She wanted to hear about me. Like, she was fine. And that was a big relief. Um, and, you know, and so then, and I don't mean to sound so negative about this because it was an awesome burn, but like when I caught that signal to call her, I got a text from the best man at my wedding, and he was hiding in a hotel in Oslo, battling depression,
Oh.
and he was just in this dark place. And I get this email, I get this, you know, as I'm like in the middle of my burn, and he's been to Burning Man several times, you know,
Yeah.
and so it was just this. And I try to call, you know, and then I immediately try to call him and try to deal with that. And, you know, so it was weird because there were amazing, wonderful moments and funny moments, and I'll share those. But then there was this sort of like hard to shake the default world kind of reality that I was like grappling with. and I just, I didn't see those things coming, and I'm, we're off the grid. It's not like, it's not like you're just gonna run home and deal with something, right? So I was really felt like I was being tested, and I have been meditating a lot last 2 years, and I have been practicing, letting go and all of that, and as crass as it might sound to the uninitiated, I felt like this was a test. Like nothing I can do here. Like I've done what I could do given the circumstances. I have to let this go, and I have to really plug in. I'm here. I want to be here now. I want to be, all that, stuff, and being mindful and intentional, and so I was able to get there, and but it was just this tug of war. Like the whole kind of week for me, it was kind of a little bit of a tug of war. I think, as crazy as it sounds, by Wednesday night, or Thursday morning, I had sort of finally, just was able to be empty and present and unplugged, but it was a bit of a struggle, prior to that, and the other thing too is, my camp. I'm one of the older dudes in my camp. My average age of my camp is probably like 30 to 40, or 32 to 42 or something, and most folks are there with their significant others, husbands, wives, whatever, and partners, whatever it is. And so I'm sort of observing, two people loving something together, right, and loving each other, in a moment. And I love my solitude. Don't get me wrong. I love my my time alone. I need my time alone. I need my solitude. But to be a Burning Man alone, and you could speak to this, right? Because you're single and looking for that, and it's like, it's interesting. I mean, I'd love to share it with my wife, but my wife's not into it. And she's cool to let me go. She's like, go, do your thing. Like, I totally have her blessing, so to speak. But there was a longing there. There was like, I guess I had longing, and maybe that the word didn't dawn on me until just now, but there was a bit of a longing there that I hadn't experienced. And to be clear about this, like 2018, I mean, there's nothing quite like your first burn. My first burn was 2018. Then by 2019, I'm like, oh, I'm in this. Like, let's go, right? And I really felt like, okay, yeah, I didn't know what this is, or I have a sense of what it is for myself. And, so 2019 was in some ways even better than 2018, because I had a sense of what it was in some ways. And then we had 3 years off. Right. And so I kind of feel like this burn was sort of like a first burn again in some ways, like yes, I had experience and and I knew kind of what to expect, so on and so forth, but maybe emotionally or spiritually, it was sort of, I don't know, I was sort of, back to square one a little bit on some level. And so yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, it was interesting. Listen, to be clear, the family reunion nature of the experience was a highlight for me, just to see some of my favorite people in the world, right? Like, it's like, oh, you, give me a fucking hug, man. I haven't seen you in 3 fucking years. Like, so I love the family reunion nature of it,
Yeah. Well, I've had a couple of thoughts. You're not the only one that I've heard who has said, who struggled with dropping in. And I wonder if, part of that is just the fact that we have been so plugged in, right? The pandemic,
that's a great point.
The pandemic really like plugged us all into each other and the screens and the immediacy of this world, and the instant communication and the Zoom calls and right. And so like the practice of being present and out in the world was especially rare. Like our muscles aren't super strong
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
And
they've atrophied, right?
They've atrophied.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my guess is that that's probably like, it's part of the reason why I like doing early team, is because I get to work out that during early team, and I don't have to waste days at the burn trying to figure out how to let that stuff go. But I saw a lot of people being tested by events at home. Being like, oh, are you really allowed to disappear? Are you really allowed to unplug for a full week? And
that's a great point. I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way, because we, for the last 3 years, have essentially been so close to those closest to us, right? So if you're quarantining with your family, you're quarantining with, whatever the case, right?
Yep.
And you have the technology, and when you're unplugging once a year on a regular basis, you're sort of like, you have that rhythm, you have that muscle memory, you have that momentum, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. This is just part of the frequency or whatever, right? And then, but after 3 years of being not doing that, and then finally unplugging again, I could see how maybe that was just not something I hadn't trained for that. you know what I mean? I was sort of out of shape, right? My muscles were atrophied, right? But I did have a kind of a funny story, So there's always goofy shit that happens, right? And kind of one of the fun things. So I met myself in a dust storm. So I met myself in a dust storm. So I was leaving Temple. After having that wonderful, kind of experience I shared, and as I'm leaving Temple, one of the whiteout blizzards, just socked us in, and so I don't know if you saw that sort of little installation just out and to the left of Temple as you sort of leaving the main entrance, but there were these flowers that somebody had planted there. They were probably 6, 8, 10 feet tall, and they're beautiful. And so I basically made it just as the whiteout was, I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me, but I made it to those flowers, and there was a little bench there. And so I was like, well, shit, I'm just going to sit here and watch the flowers in the sandstorm, and, maybe I'll be here for 10 hours. I don't know, but I'm going to enjoy it. And so,
what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing?
And so I'm there, I don't know, 45 minutes or something, or maybe 30 minutes. But and then in through the dust, I see this lost soul seemingly lost soul that's sort of like making his way with his bike, and I said, hey, I said, come over here. I said, I have a, there's a bench, you can take a break, and and so so this gentleman, this guy comes up, and I said, hey, I said, how you burning? And he's like, oh, it's my first burn. He's like, it's crazy, and I'm like, yep, nothing quite like your first time. I said, where are you from? And he said, Los Angeles. I said, oh, so I'm from Los Angeles. I said, what's your name? He said, Scott. I said, well, my name is Scott. and he and I just end up like talking for an hour during the sandstorm. I was like meeting myself, talking to myself.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Just a fun, goofy thing. And, and for those people listening who haven't been to Playa or Burning Man, I mean, when you think about the immensity of the space and the fact that, two people are going to come together in a whiteout snowstorm in the middle of fucking nowhere, a whiteout sandstorm in the middle of fucking nowhere, and turns out to be, somebody that is, from your town with the same name as you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, and you're talking to him, you got to talk to him about, like, you have a deep appreciation for that first burn. and
Yeah.
you got to feel that again, right? Like he's reminding you of that. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I was that guy, my first burn
Yeah.
out there, lost in a snowstorm. What have I done?
That's so good.
Newbie, you're the best, and I
Mm.
want to be respectful of your time. This is fantastic. I hope you'll come back. Maybe we can do a part two.
Sure.
You know?
Yes. Yeah. It's me. I'm up for the conversations because this world is so mundane. How do I do like it's this is the struggle is real for me. The struggle is real for me.
Struggle is real, indeed.
I need to, I guess, drop into like the gratitude of being able to do laundry. Like that's what I got to do. I don't know. I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's how do you find the sacred in the mundane?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge, and it's you're serving yourself, you're washing your clothes, it's an act of service. You're just serving yourself.
Well, and everyone else too, who's going to be in my orbit. They don't want me. I will admit though, when I was putting the laundry in, I was covered in dust, and I had to smell it. I love the dust. I do. Even after this year, even after this crazy dusty year.
I do too. I love the dust. Although it gave me an eye infection. I'm literally my eyes are messed up. They've been messed up for a week.
Oh
yes.
no.
So guess I should have worn my goggles. I did. But yeah, somehow, some way, I got a little bit of extra Playa power in my eyes. But anyway, and you're heading to a decompression right now, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm gonna. There's a burner bar here in Denver called the Beacon.
Mm-hmm.
It's this beautiful art bar, and it was created by burners, and so I got back and I was like, okay, what do I need to do? And I'm like, what's Beacon doing? And then it was like decompression party on Sunday. Like,
right
okay,
on. There you go. The Playa provides. Well, you enjoy, and do me a favor, tell all of the burners, hello for me. Another burner says, hey, from LA.
Are there any Scots here?
Yeah,
are there any Scots here?
We're everywhere, dude. We're everywhere. Well, you enjoy the decompression, and let's not let a year go by. We didn't even joke at all about the fact that we missed each other on the Playa. Here we are reconnecting, but that's it. It wasn't meant to be, and that's fine, And
well, I'm mad about that too. I'm mad about that too. That was another thing. I thought for sure I would see you, and I didn't. And so,
and but here's the truth. We were at and by the way, the photo you sent me of you, that beautiful photo, you're with your friends, and I can tell that it's morning time, and you're at the Robo Heart party. That was Friday morning. I think it was the sunrise set. I bet it was the sunrise set because I was there.
Oh.
and I know we were dancing by each other. We were just, that's it. It's like, how close can you be and still miss each other? Right?
Yeah, I know. So true. That's why when you do see people out there, you're like, yay!
Oh my God. Well, and you'll appreciate this because, I met you through Lunatic.
Yeah.
And this year, Lunatic's son, David, who's a dear friend of mine.
I freaking love that guy.
He's awesome, right? And so he and I go way back. And so suddenly he's there, with his pop. And I was so glad that they were together. And I had seen them a couple times. I had actually saw them early on. And then they came to Camp Corny. We went out Monday night a little bit. Nice. And then we had missed each other. And that morning at the sunrise set, I'm dancing my ass off, whatever. I turn around and right behind me is David and Lunatic and their friend. I'm like, yay!
Yes.
Look at yes, we're here. Everything's happening. It's all the things.
Yes, those are the best. That is the best.
So good. That's so good. All right, newbie. Much love, my friend.
Much
and
love.
Enjoy the decompression, and we'll talk. More to come.
More to come. Thank you for the space to drop back into the playa on this afternoon. Much appreciated.
You got it. You got it. The honor is ours, and the gifts continue. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Good talking to you.
Good. We'll see you later.
Okay. Bye.